I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Deanne Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
I was just thinking that, when we come on for these conversations, I get to have my girlfriend time. And like, what are we talking about today? You mentioned something about the takeover in DC, and I don't know what's happening because I live in my own world. So, which sometimes people need to do, check out and be in their own world. And that's what I'm doing right now to take care of myself. So, what's going on in DC and who's taking over? And you're just going to get like a natural reaction to whatever it is that the news is. What's the tea?
I'm very happy that you get to live in your own little world, and I'm sorry to disrupt that. But yeah, so just this past today, let's see, just in the past few days, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 days, current president Trump has deployed the National Guard in DC and has
Oh.
taken over.
Oh, that's news. The entire National Guard for what?
So the narrative is that crime is out of control in DC, and that he believes that the National Guard needs to be deployed to control the just rampant crime that's running around DC, although there are no statistics to support his claim of that. So the National Guard, I looked it up this morning, that right now there's about 800 National Guard troops in DC. They are mostly posted at train station hubs. So outside of Union Station, I saw a video of someone that was taking a run yesterday around that area just to kind of inform people about what he was seeing. And there were, I think, at least 3 or 4 tanks out in front of Union Station. And all of the National Guard, of course, are armed. We've seen video of them arresting homeless people that are experiencing homelessness. Their choices are to either go to a shelter or submit to mental health services. I don't know exactly what that looks like, if they're taking them to an institution, mental health like lockdown spaces, or what that exactly entails. But there was video of a person experiencing homelessness that was wheelchair bound, with National Guardsmen around them with a spit hood over their heads. So for those who've never heard of the spit hoods, they're essentially a hood that goes over the head with a drawstring, and police here use them when they are under the impression that the person might spit at them or might otherwise cause them harm from their mouth. So they put the hood over their heads to supposedly protect the police. It's another barbaric practice that our policing has developed in recent years. So it's really disturbing. The DC Metropolitan Police they're working in conjunction with the National Guard, but the National Guard has control. And there are, at least based on my Googles this morning, there are at least 3 states that have contributed National Guard troops to this effort, South Carolina being one of them, of which I moved from in the past few years. McMaster, it's all red states, it's all Republican governors who are chomping at the bit to delegate their troops to this effort. And McMaster, who is the governor of South Carolina, put out a statement that said, because we're in hurricane season, there's a really big Cat 5 headed, skirting the U.S. coast right now. And South Carolina is in one of the bullseye areas for that kind of activity. And he's like, well, of course, if anything is heading in our direction, they'll send the troops right back. Of course, we know how reliable that can be. So there are, on top of the explosion of ICE agents, not only did they get, in the billions of dollars of budget in the last big beautiful bill that Trump got passed, and they are actively recruiting people. And one of the more famous names that I'm hearing that is signing up to become an ICE agent is the actor Dean Cain, who played Superman in a couple
Recently?
of
Mm.
Supermans ago, and he has decided he wants to join ICE and take up the fight to save our country. I'm using air quotes for those of you who are listening, but
Okay. All right.
really here for those of you who are watching. So
Save our country.
let's discuss.
Let's discuss. So, like, okay, this is like some serious girlfriend time right here. The
Yeah,
first thing that came to mind, I just want to like just go like what like happened in my mind as you're like relaying this information to me. The first thing that I thought of is when I think of DC, I think of Chocolate City. So when I think of like over militarization and over surveillance, I'm thinking of that's traditionally what communities that have predominantly non-white human beings in them experience. So like, all right, now you're taking a whole entire district because it's not for those that are out of the country,
right.
DC is a district. It's not really known as a state in
Not
the
it.
United States, but it is the place where our White House and all of our government happens, but it is not actually organized as a state. So it runs a little bit differently. So I'm thinking about over militarization and over criminalization of people, especially people without resources. So like hearing that somebody who is unhoused and on the street that needs services, and then hearing what their options are, and that like that speaks to what we know has been happening as privatized industry that is a part of the prison industrial complex, creating these holding spaces where they can take more and more people. And of course, when they take these people into the system, these people become system impacted. And
Right.
so I'm thinking about like the capitalism in the prison industrial complex that they are in Project 2025 said that they were going to do. So this is just another avenue for which we're seeing this happen. I'm thinking about the spit masks, and I'm thinking about then that also is hiding people's identities. So if there are loved ones that are looking for people or that could identify a human being to
Right.
be a part of a community, then by putting a spit mask over their head with the under the guise of it protecting the officers, and there might be a component of that that's true, but then there's also this other component of the reality of then now you're hiding people's identities, and you can lose people when you hide people's identities. I'm thinking about systems of slavery and putting people into larger amounts of citizen and population into these institutions then does create another form of slavery in the sense that we can talk about it as modern day slavery.
Mhm.
And I'm just really being able to witness the rebuilding of white nation. I'm gonna say it every time I get an opportunity and a
Yeah.
chance to, because that's the reality of what it is that the United States is experiencing in this moment. And the more that they can overcriminalize communities and populations and use our tax dollar resources to be able to do that without any form of oversight, we're really in a turbulent and chaotic and dangerous moment in the United States. And
Right.
it's interesting that I'm coming to this experience as I am off the island. People can see my background is a little different. So I'm in Miami with my older daughter because I just needed to see my people. I need to be close to those who look like me. And I also, when I got off of that airline, was in the reality of US privilege in a real major way and having access to all the things that I would want, even though it's things that would kill me. The first thing I said to my young person was, I want some US death food because the food is different here. It's just different. So, but I went to go get it, and I got a Philly chicken cheesesteak, and like I could taste the difference in the meat and everything like that. But I could go get a Philly chicken cheesesteak, and I could go into the grocery store and actually buy milk and like just like little things. Someone was like, "Why are you here?" Because I know that you don't enjoy being in the US as much. And I was just like listing all of the things that I was recognizing as the privilege that the US does afford,
Right.
different from the islands that I only can stomach in little doses, but I needed it in this moment. So it's like as I'm hearing the limits that are happening in DC on people's lives, I'm juxtaposed against this desire to come off of the island for a moment and have that US privilege, but at what cost? And I don't want it to be at cost to other people's lives who are not able to enjoy the privilege.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's real. I mean, I know that you made that change. You made the choice to leave purposely and with intention, and I know that it's brought you
Mhm.
great happiness in the time that you've been gone. But there's also conveniences that this country, that the U.S., that we've become accustomed to. Those of us who live here,
Absolutely.
and when you go elsewhere and you go to other parts of the world, things are not necessarily as readily accessible, or maybe not as accessible in the same way that they are here, and it
That's a source.
feels, the it's always an interesting trope to me when USians go to other countries and the first thing they try to find is the McDonald's or the Burger King.
Right.
It's like,
Ridiculous.
why did you travel all the way to this other country to go eat
And what this?
crap food that you can get here? But
Mhm.
we as human beings, I truly believe that the familiar is what's comforting to us. And I think that also contributes a lot to why change doesn't happen as fast as we would like to see it, when it feels so obvious that change is needed. But people really cling to the familiar, even if it's toxic, even
Absolutely.
if it's not good for them.
Mm.
We stay in relationships a lot longer than we should in a lot of ways. And myself
Mm.
was in an abusive marriage that I stayed in way too long, but it was familiar, even though it was toxic and there were a lot of horrible things and there was a lot of manipulation that happened that put me in a place to think I needed to stay there. There was also the fear of the unknown, the fear of what's out there
Mm.
that I don't know or don't know how to navigate. And so yeah, I think all of those things are real, and it's yeah, it's I truly believe that Trump is testing this out. He's made mention. I don't watch him very often, but he's made mention since the National Guard deployed in DC. He's made mention of doing this in other cities. Chicago. He keeps
Mhm.
mentioning Chicago. So but it's only, interestingly enough, it's only in cities. Somebody else,
Urban metropolitan areas.
but it's only with mayors, non-white mayors, that
Hmm.
he's doing this. So DC's mayor is a black woman, and so and he's taken away the power to regulate her own city in a lot of ways from her. And so he's definitely talking about there's a pattern of behavior of the places that he's choosing to target for further National Guard deployment. Couple of things. I saw a video of citizens, out in front of, I think they were at Union Station, and one of them was a veteran and he had a megaphone and he was speaking into the megaphone to the troops saying,
Yeah.
I am a veteran, I served however long I served, and you do not have to follow directions and orders that are unlawful. And this is unlawful. You're
Yeah.
occupying a city that in a country, these are your citizens. These are the people that
You're supposed to protect.
you can rise up and not follow through with this. And so that is something that comes to mind in how I feel like we're in another moment where people who are being asked, and I hear people say this to ICE individuals when I'm watching videos of ICE, supposed ICE agents, because we don't really know what agency they work for, because there's no identifying anything on their uniforms or on their person, and when asked for identification they don't give it. So we'll assume that
Mm.
it's either ICE agents or they're working with ICE, asking them, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do this, and they keep going. Now, I know a
Of
lot of
course.
people that are operating adjacent to and in ICE right now have this vigilante mentality, and they feel like, that I kind of likened ICE to and the agencies that are working alongside ICE right now as being just this militia, how we saw the militia build up in this country back during its inception, and certainly slave capture catches and that kind of thing, which is what our policing came out of. So
Which is what is
oh,
familiar. I was
and
going to go back to that concept,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That like the familiar of the history of the development of this country is
right,
to use these tactics to create control and hierarchies of power.
right. And if we don't stand up, so for us regular, if you're listening to us and you're in the US and you're in a city that, because I think this is probably happening more in urban settings maybe than in rural at this point. But if you're in a city where this is happening, maybe not necessarily the National Guard, but you see increased ICE presence, are you standing up and telling them, we don't want you here, we don't want, because we have to keep pushing back. He's doing this and his cohorts are doing this because they want to see if we'll just let them do it, if we will just let them come into these cities and stand in their militarization of those cities, take away the control of those cities from the duly elected people that we put in office to run the cities. It's going to be upon all of us, and especially those of us who enjoy a higher level of privilege, to be able to stand in that space and
Hmm.
and say this isn't okay. So
And what does organizing in opposition to stand against some of these like liberties that are being taken and how our democracy is being undermined
mhm.
by a lot of this legislation and a lot of these militarization actions that are occurring? And what does it look like for organizing? I know that I do still receive, text messages to join on text messaging campaigns
Mhm.
online. I do hear about people mobilizing in different communities, coming together to have a presence of voice to say that we are, as US citizens, not happy with what is going on and going forward. And then I imagine that there is a faction of human beings, like the person that you said wants to join and participate in some of this ICE. What does that look like what is your personal interaction and engagement with this? Because I know that my young person doesn't even want to go outside at all. So, like, there's no form of engagement with what's going on. Again, creating and living in our own world, which some of us that have experienced this are conditioned to it. Like, I'm conditioned living in Miami, Florida, to know that there's going to be an increased amount of, not in my particular community, because I'm blessed to be situated in a place that's very diverse, I should say, and has a higher economic status of income. But then in communities that are very close, very proximal, 10 minutes drive, you know, 15-minute walk away, there
Mhm.
is an increased presence of police at the schools. There's an increased presence of police at any transportation. There's an increased presence of police driving around the communities, randomly stopping and checking people. So I am in non-white communities used to and expect to have this over militarization and criminalization of the communities, even though they're just human citizens that are going about their business. Most of them are working people and are trying to just live, but they're being targeted and harassed in a way that doesn't allow you to have the freedom and the liberty that you expect as a U.S. citizen.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I certainly can't speak to all of the organizing that is probably happening. I'm not in the loop with all of it, but
Yeah,
I,
listen.
like you, I'm on several different text threads of organizations and organizers that are working together. Most of them are directly related to what's happening in Palestine still, and trying to stop
Yes.
the US trying to get an embargo on the arms and the money that we're sending to Israel, continually, to continue to annihilate the Palestinians. But having said that, I know that I feel like there are letter writing, call making, campaigns to elected officials to say, this can't happen. You have to stand in this space.
Yes.
I'm hearing organizers, Amanda Seales specifically, just recently in the past couple of days, I was listening to her talk about, she was talking about
Good
where,
old Amanda.
where, shout out to Amanda. Where is, she just did a really interesting, I want to give a quick plug. She just did,
Yes.
well, it just aired last night, her episode of Surrounded, where she was debating, which she was surrounded by Black conservatives, and she identified herself
Oh,
as a
wonderful.
Black radical. And so it's an interesting format. And I know a lot of people heard about Mehdi Hazan, who did an episode of Surrounded by, um, I don't remember exactly, Trump supporters, I think, maybe. I don't remember exactly what the classification
Mhm.
is for the people he was debating. But anyway, hers dropped last night and I watched it this morning. And anyway, she's been talking a lot about, where is Barack Obama, former
Mm.
president of the United States? Where is Bill Clinton? Where is any of the presidents that are still alive? If they are this worried about democracy, first of all, maybe they're not, because we haven't heard from them. But if they are, where are they? Why aren't they organizing? Barack Obama was a community organizer before he got into politics.
Mhm.
Why aren't they using their platforms to stand in that space? They can't be touched, really. They've already served their terms. they've got lifetime health care, they've got lifetime Secret Service coverage, they're all very, financially stable in terms of any of that. And their voices could really matter in this moment in terms of organizing. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that, because I thought, you know
Uh,
what, they are a unique group of people who have sat in that chair and who know and are witnessing what he is doing and could be monumental in at least voicing opposition to it, and we're not hearing from them about it. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about
well, I mean, I have a reaction to that. My reaction, considering the polarization of our political parties, is what I want to say. There is, I could imagine. Well, we told y'all so. We told y'all so. We told y'all so. I
Sure.
mean, I know there's a lot of folks in non-white communities that are like, this what y'all wanted because this
Yeah.
is what you voted for, and so now we're living in what it is that you wanted, and now everybody's going to have to experience it because they're for non-white human beings, like I've said repeatedly, this is not new for us.
Right.
None of this is new for us. This is like, okay, now we're existing and a larger demographic of people are being impacted by it, but it's not new for specific communities. So it's like, all right, we're going along with what we're going along, and we're trying to stay as far away from system impact as we can in the different ways that we can. Going back to our former presidents that support the Democratic Party in the way that they do, I imagine that they could be like a try to tell y'all, try to get y'all to come along our party lines to keep it moving. And then the other component of it is the reality is that when you do reach a certain level of society and you sit amongst, regardless of what political party you participate in, you are aware of the way that you legislation is being administered, right? So during each one of the folks that we think about as more progressive in their presidential policies, there also was a lot of violations during the Obama administration with bombing and rounding up people who were identified as migrants. That was happening. It just wasn't the news of the day, and it wasn't the focus. During the Clinton administration, the three strikes you're out and the overcriminalization of non-white communities and populations, it droves and droves and droves. Again, this stuff has been happening. It's just that in this administration and with Project 2025, it is the news of the day. It is we are pushing this agenda and watch us push this agenda. And there's not much that not much pushback that we are going to accept for this agenda, because we let you know before the president was voted into office. We shared during the campaign trail what our focus and our intentions were. And at this point, it would be to figure out what the organizing in. I see both I see all of the former presidents having some responsibility in it, and I don't know what it is that they're doing within their community and network. What they are doing on a national level, I don't know how much that is going to help in any way, shape, or form organizing than the organizer that comes and knocks on my door and asks me to make sure that I vote for, people coming up in the local elections that could actually have some change in the community that's here
Yeah.
in this part of Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I wonder, or in responsiveness, or my reaction to that is that I feel like that particular group of people, former presidents and vice presidents, who are no longer beholden in any way to campaigns or needing donors or all of the things that keep the folks that end up in elected service in a way of corruption and beholdenness to people who may want them to do things that they shouldn't do. I agree that all of the things that are happening now on different levels, certainly, but still, this stuff is not new. It's certainly escalated. And I understand certainly organizers on the ground, certainly organizers that don't look like me, who are like, we told y'all, and we're not, we're here, we get that. I agree with that and understand that. I do believe that people who rise to that level, the people that have sat in that chair and who serve directly under that chair, just because they're out of office, this is the question that Amanda was posing, does their active civil service, their ability to move in civil service, they get these benefits for the rest of their lives because of where they were, and those benefits are paid for by taxpayer money. So even though they're not in those positions any longer, do they have a responsibility to still use the capital and the power that they have? And if we're really worried about democracy crumbling, and maybe I need to ask for clarification. Were you saying, by saying that all of this stuff was happening in other, during other administrations as
Administrations.
well, but not maybe news of the day, by saying that, are you also saying that they're quiet because they're in alignment with what he's doing in terms of tearing things down? Would you say that,
I
or?
would I wouldn't go as far as to say that somebody is in alignment with
Mhm.
the process and policies that are being put up in place. And I haven't had a conversation with any of the former presidents
Right.
to know what is in their mind. I was just making speculation.
Yeah.
And I'm also speculating on the way that I also feel,
Mhm.
about some of the things that are happening. I was like, I'm ghost. I'm out because I'm not going to participate in what I see and know they've said is coming. I don't want to participate in it.
Right.
I want to be able to come back in, enjoy my privilege, and leave. I'm being real about it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that a lot of these policies were actually also occurring during those administrations.
Right.
They were happening. Like whatever goes on in the way that they run offices, these type of targeting of specific communities has been consistent throughout the existence of the United States. So
Right.
there's a component. I wouldn't call it alignment. I'm just saying like there is just a status quo of what continues to happen until we actually completely change our systems, until we transform our systems in their entirety. We live within this machine of structure that
Right.
continues to move forward. So that, and then talking about accountability and responsibility to having been in the highest office of the United States, I don't know what that accountability and responsibility looks like because I know the Obama Foundation and the Clinton Foundation are doing things.
Mhm.
I just don't know I don't know how they're organizing because I have not been paying attention, but I think that that would be a good thing for us to look at as to in what ways they are using their positions and powers today to stand for the policies that support more US citizens if they're doing that at all.
Yeah.
But I imagine so, and I don't know how much responsibility and accountability that we're asking for and from them in a way where I don't think about them as being responsible for what's going on right now
Mm.
and or having accountability. I have like they've served their time and in what ways they continue to have resources and do whatever work that they're doing. That's for me okay. Like handle that. Do that. And I'm assuming that you're doing something because you've sat in civil service. And that's assuming it and or you did your time. So there is the
Yeah.
old saying that to whom much is given, a lot is expected.
Yeah.
And
And the fact
I'm
that they're
I'm
still
like,
getting resources from taxpayer dollars, even though they're not in those positions anymore, to me, I found myself really going, I hadn't thought about that. That yes, because my first thought was they did their time. They're not in office anymore. They should be allowed to just go off and disappear. But I wonder how it works for them to not be speaking out, to see what's happening on an escalated level than what was happening before. I mean, yes, things
mm,
happen in past administrations, but this is certainly, and I would like,
feels escalated, but I'm curious if that's because it's not the focus. Like if we actually looked at the data, the research and the numbers, to see how many immigrant people were separated from their families and
Yeah.
were held in some type of detention. I
Including
don't know
people
how
with
different it would be.
PTSD.
Obama did have a wall situation that wasn't called the wall, but it was happening.
Right.
There was a whole lot of drones and bombs that were
Yeah.
happening,
Yes.
during that time in
Yes.
foreign countries. Again, I don't think anybody is going to top what happened during the Clinton administration with the three strikes you're
No,
out. I just
it's
don't think
kind
that
of,
that's
yeah.
it's
Right.
being done differently in the Trump administration because now you're over criminalizing people because of resources and not because of strikes. You're doing it because they're unhoused
Right. Right.
or they're a parent who can't take care of all their kids or whatever the kind of social inequities that are happening that are being criminalized at this
Right.
point. But if
Right.
we're looking at the numbers, I feel like in the US there's some consistency because when you've been in community where that is the reality of the conversation of your community and your social activism all the time,
Right.
it doesn't feel like it's that much increase. It just feels like, okay, it's consistent. And now this is the news. And now people are like talking about it because this is what the administration is saying we're doing, and we're doing it up front. We're not covering that. We're doing it. We're doing it, and we're saying this is going to make America the country that we want it to be. I'm sorry, the United States, not America. I
Yeah.
apologize for that. But the United States, the country that we
Yeah,
want it to be.
I think you're right. I mean, I think it does feel like it. I think, the deployment of the National Guard, in our nation's capital feels like an escalation. But you're right.
That does.
It it's the migrant situation certainly is still has been happening all along, a little more vocal, a little more out in front of people's understanding and visual, because they're not trying to hide it or anything, and of course the drone warfare and all of that was happening. So I agree that probably if we were that we're just speculating, and that there if we were really to look at statistics and compare apples to apples, then it may not necessarily look like an escalation. I still
I think that, I'm
I
sorry.
well, I still feel like in my heart that it would I would like to see the past presidents, if we're really in this much peril, I would like to see the past presidents step into that as people who are, you know, still receiving services from taxpayer funds. I'd like to see them stand up for what's happening in the country, and if they had an opinion about it. And so, but I can't
Okay.
assume that because they're not speaking into it, that means they don't have an opinion. But it's a unique group of people that really have there could be very little implications or repercussions to them for standing in that space. And I think that's a unique space, different from organizers that are on the ground and that kind of thing, because um
Hmm.
you know
Well, I imagine that those people are still getting funding from different organizations and different folks to hold their foundations and whatever agendas they're having within their organizations. So there's that sensitivity of relationship that you have to be in consideration of. That that's something that I
yeah,
think about.
true.
And then I am also curious as to what it is that there is the expectation that they would do. So like speak out
I don't
because
know,
there was I don't Bill
know.
Clinton I didn't he's not on my algorithm to know, but there was a period of time where I was receiving stuff about that those emails that come in and it says President Obama is saying and stand with President Obama on A, B, C, and D. Again, that's coming from on the ground organizers that are creating these actions, but I'm not sure. Like I just don't know. I don't know how President Obama or the Obama family, for that matter,
Mhm.
because Michelle has always had stuff to say about what's going on
Thing from
in the
her,
United
yeah,
States. But
so
I'm like,
be quiet.
I'm curious as to what it is that they could be contributing in this moment. Like, what would that look like? What is the dream and the vision of what it is that they could be doing to support organizing of people? Like, you think that their voice would mobilize more people, different from
I think it
the
would.
actions and mobilizations in community?
I think it
What do you-
would, only because it would take it to a new level of having. If we talk about the importance of safeguarding democracy, if democracy is being systematically dismantled and changed to a level that might be irreparable, um, them speaking into that publicly on some whatever platform that would
Mm.
choose to air it, which I dare say most platforms would air them saying this is pretty messed up.
Anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they
So
could use social media because
they could.
until
But
social
it's
media
one way
removes
for
them
them to
from
say
that.
this is messed up,
Hmm.
and I haven't heard that from any of them. So they're loud about it before the elections. You know, they're loud about
Hmm.
it when it's leading up to the vote. But then and yes, the vote has consequences and all of that. That's not really the part that I'm arguing. It's why does it get quiet afterwards? Because now people are in office and they're doing the actual things are happening, and it's like they belong to a very unique fraternity of people that that have the power to speak into something on a platform and at a level with the size megaphone that most nobody else has that same level of ability to speak into. And so I don't know what I would love to
All
see.
right, so Bill
Something, you know.
and Barack, you're being called into your organizer
Yeah,
space right
I
now
mean,
on Why Do I
and
Give a Fuck
Hillary and
podcast. We're
Kamala
asking
and
you to
you
come up
know
and give
and
us
Biden
some,
and yeah, all of them.
yeah.
Anybody that's still alive that was in the POTUS or VPOTUS level, the bastardization of the SCOTUS and and the things that are being overturned. I mean, why are they so vocal leading up to an election, but then it's crickets after that's over?
Mhm.
There's still need for them to be able to use their power and their position and their privilege in service of the people that when they were in those positions they said they were there to do, and they're still civil servants because they're still getting publicly funded support from the constituents that they used to serve. I mean, when you're a
Mhm.
civil servant, when that's your heart, you really never stop being a civil servant whether you're in elected office or not. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting question that I had not really pondered before I heard Amanda talking about it, and I thought I would bring that in because I find it an interesting concept because I feel like we're, if nothing else, we are all those of us who want change to happen and want things to be better for those our folks in community. We don't exactly know what it's going to take to make that change. We just have to keep
Mhm.
trying things that we've never done before, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's an unwritten rule of the the club of past presidents and past vice presidents that you don't say, once you're part of that club, you don't speak against that club. And I mean, even to
Mm.
the point where the next person that gets in office doesn't say shit about the person that predeceased
Was before
them,
that.
um,
Yeah.
for at least the first 2 years of their administration. And it's just this boys club kind of thing, which
Mm.
I know we need to get away from the boys club, but uh, yeah, I just think there's an untapped power potential there that I think is their responsibility to step into, regardless of how people voted. I don't. Yes, people voted, and yes, there is going there. Whoever voted for him, there's an element of accountability and personal responsibility for what we are now dealing with. There are a lot of people that didn't vote. There are a lot of people that couldn't vote. There are a lot of people that were disenfranchised from voting, and they're all suffering too. So it's like, I don't know how productive well, this is what you got argument is, because we're
Well, yeah,
all
I don't think it's
suffering.
productive. I think that I don't think it's productive. I think that it's the reality more so.
Yeah.
And having this conversation is making me think of like a proposal or suggestion for those people that have that level of power and platform to be able to use their knowledge of how the interworkings of the office go to give us some
Yeah.
policies, practices, structures, and something to be able to do to then stand against the things that we don't like. We know that voting is one of the major things that we can do on a local level in between our larger presidential elections, but then also for people to be like civically engaged in your communities, because where it is that you are able to affect how many police officers are roaming around and over criminalizing your folks is in your community, like
Yeah.
coming out together and going and talking to your local city government mayor and your city officials and saying, hey, we don't want to spend our dollars in this community in this way, and what are the different ways that we can spend it to provide more social services and resources to folks, and not just because the argument could be that the social service and resources that we're putting them in these, pseudo prison like things, but again, that's just feeding into the prison industrial complex and creating a system of modern day slavery. And so I am hopeful that there's a fire under everyone to be able to think about the different ways that they could civically engage. And then it's also, now I'm curious to see what it is that, the Clinton Foundation or the Obama Foundation has been doing in service of the country, the support that they have from the U.S. citizens.
Well, thank you for exploring that with me.
Yes. Interesting exploration. All right, Wes.
Why do I give a fuck? Why
Thanks
do
for
I
joining
give a
us.
fuck?
Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why do I give a
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Deanne. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.